Good morning, everyone. You're watching our mid-morning edition of Arirang News on this Thursday, May 28th. Live from Seoul, I'm Shin Se-min. Before we get started, these are the stories we're following at this hour. South Korea sees a spike in new coronavirus cases, highlighting the threat of a second wave. The country reported the biggest daily spike this week as millions of students returned to school, and authorities are scrambling to contain an outbreak that stemmed from an e-commerce warehouse and a call center. Preparing to get things done, President Moon Jae-in is hosting two rival political party leaders ahead of the start of the 21st National Assembly on May 30th. Plus, NASA's SpaceX launch has been scrubbed due to poor weather less than half an hour ahead of its scheduled liftoff. The next try at the historic launch will be this coming Saturday. There has been a spike in the number of COVID-19 cases here in South Korea due to a cluster of infections related to a logistics center of e-commerce company Coupang. As of this morning, at least 69 people have been tested positive related to the cluster infections, mostly concentrated in capital Seoul, Incheon, and the surrounding Gyeonggi-do province. Now, the authorities are currently testing nearly 4,000 people who had either worked there or had contact with the patient. Also, a call center employee has tested positive in Bucheon. Now, the patient had reportedly worked at the Coupang Logistics Center during the weekend, and nearly 1,600 people work at that call center alone. And the city of Bucheon has announced it is returning back to stronger social distancing measures. More than 100,000 people in the United States have died from coronavirus as of Wednesday local time, 111 days since the first death in that country. According to the count kept by Johns Hopkins University, the country has now recorded at least 100,047 deaths. Now, this is the best estimate and is also likely an undercount. At least nearly 1.7 million people have contracted the virus in that country. Over in Italy, another epicenter of coronavirus, death toll has climbed up to by 117 to top 33,000 on Wednesday. And with 584 additional cases, the total number of confirmed cases in Italy now amounts to over 231,000. South Korea's quarantine authorities are set to review possible emergency approval on imports of Remdesivir, an Ebola treatment that has emerged as a new hope in tackling coronavirus. A group of infectious disease experts will begin related discussions on this Thursday, and a senior official from the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said during a press briefing this week that depending on the outcomes of the experts' meeting, necessary procedures will be dealt with by the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety. According to the U.S. National Institutes of Health, Remdesivir has successfully shortened the median recovery time from 15 days to 11. South Korea's prevention and diagnosis technology in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic is under the spotlight. The world-renowned scientific journal, Nature, has published a special feature on this country's efforts. The article called South Korea a global leader in innovation through its active investment and public-private partnerships. Our Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
How South Korea made itself a global innovation leader. That's the title of a feature story covered in Nature, a world-famous scientific journal. But how did South Korea become known for its innovation? This is one of the number of bio companies in South Korea that have created diagnostic kits during the COVID-19 pandemic. With high accuracy and mass production facilities available, export orders are flooding in from all over the world. As the article indicates, this is thanks to the South Korean government's steady investment in research and development in preparation for various infectious diseases.
We are able to flatten the curve thanks to the diagnostic test kit technology we've accumulated over time.
According to Nature Index and its report on OECD gross domestic spending on R&D, Israel, at 4.9%, is the only country that spends more of its GDP on research and development than South Korea at 4.5%. This translates to $95.4 billion spent on R&D in 2018 alone. Nature also cited the South Korean government's top-down decision-making and systematic cooperation with the private sector as success factors. The article adds that their approach has seen South Korea become a global leader in information and communication technology, while establishing ties to government, academia, and industry. And as Tim Mazerol from University of Western Australia in Perth, who specializes in innovation and entrepreneurship, concludes, where South Korea is in innovation now is a miracle when you consider where Korea was. 이승재, Arirang News.
Now, this just coming in, South Korea's central bank has cut its key interest rate to 0.5%. The rate cut is likely in response to sluggish exports and a contraction in domestic consumption as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. The Bank of Korea cut its key interest rate to a historic low of 0.75% back in March, but kept its benchmark interest rate unchanged for the month of April as the central bank opted to monitor the impact of measures already imposed. The Monetary Policy Board is also due to release the country's expected economic growth rate in the next coming hours, and we'll have more details on that during our next newscast coming up at noon Korea time. At the nation's top office, President Moon Jae-in will hold a luncheon with floor leaders of the country's two largest political parties this afternoon, ahead of the opening of the new National Assembly. President Moon invited Kim Tae-yeon of the ruling Democratic Party and Chu Ho-young of the main opposition United Future Party to the Blue House to hold candid discussions on state affairs, the economic crisis triggered by coronavirus pandemic, as well as a third extra budget are likely to be discussed. Now, some disappointing news from the U.S. The much-anticipated rocket launch by SpaceX was called off on Wednesday due to weather concerns. The next attempt to launch is set for this Saturday, and it'll be the first crewed mission to launch from the U.S. since 2011. Our Yoon Jung-min reports.
The historic mission to carry astronauts into orbit by Elon Musk's private rocket company SpaceX was postponed Wednesday due to inclement weather. It was scheduled to blast off from Kennedy Space Center in Florida at around 4:33 p.m. Eastern Time, but the launch was scrubbed due to storm concerns. It was due to take two NASA astronauts in the Crew Dragon capsule to the International Space Station.
In Dragon SpaceX, unfortunately, we are not going to launch today. You are go for 5.100 launch scrub.
The next attempt to launch is set for Saturday. If successful, it will be the first time in 9 years to send astronauts to space from U.S. soil, as well as the first time that a commercially developed space vehicle has carried humans into orbit. U.S. President Donald Trump and the First Lady Melania Trump attended Wednesday's event but had to leave without seeing history being made. Aside from the historic launch, SpaceX's in-house spacesuits have drawn a lot of attention from the media and public. The astronauts were seen wearing custom-fitted spacesuits, which not only looked brand new and slim-fit, but also provide them with protection against the dangers associated with a rocket launch. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The Chinese government is poised to greenlight a highly controversial national security bill in the next coming hours. Beijing's move comes despite intense opposition from Hong Kong residents, as well as continued warnings from the United States government. The bill will sharply reduce the freedoms enjoyed by people in Hong Kong. Our Kim Hyo-sun with more.
Big crowds took to the streets of Hong Kong on Wednesday protesting against China's proposed national security law, as well as Hong Kong's controversial national anthem bill, which bans insults to mainland China's national anthem. The new bill sparked debate as it criminalizes insults to the national anthem with up to 3 years in prison. This comes as Beijing's ceremonial parliament is moving to enact a national security law for Hong Kong that would allow Chinese security agencies to severely limit civil liberties in Hong Kong. While over 3,000 police officers have been mobilized throughout the island, hundreds of people continue to cry for freedom.
I'm worried about the national anthem law. I know that it will eventually pass in the Legislative Council because pro-establishment lawmakers are the majority. I came to Hong Kong from mainland China when I was young, and that's why I know the darkness of China, and I'm worried China will impose its values and system on Hong Kong.
China's move has prompted U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to report to the U.S. Congress that the Trump administration no longer regards Hong Kong as autonomous from mainland China. Pompeo has repeatedly warned Beijing that the national security law will lead to the Trump administration halting some or all of its special trade and economic relations with Hong Kong that the island enjoyed since 1997. Such measures are expected to have far-reaching consequences for global commerce and significantly transform how Chinese and foreign companies operate. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
And Boeing will be laying off more than 6,700 workers this week alone as part of a broader effort to help the airplane manufacturer weather the COVID-19 pandemic. In a letter on Wednesday from Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun to employees, he cited the virus's impact on the airline industry as the reason behind the layoffs. Overall, Boeing is expected to shed 10% of its 160,000 workers worldwide. And according to Bloomberg, about 1,300 union members have applied for buyouts or early retirement, which accounts for some of the job losses, with thousands more expected to take the same option. The employment market worldwide has been slammed by the COVID-19 pandemic, but the demographic suffering the most is young adults. The International Labor Organization is reporting on the current state of affairs, saying that the situation is likely to get worse before it gets better. Our Kim Do-yeon explains.
In a newly released report, the International Labor Organization says 1 out of 6 young people between the ages of 18 to 29 years old have lost their jobs as a direct result of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's the worst among all age ranges, and women are more affected than men. However, the head of the organization said that given the circumstances, it wasn't that unexpected.
The situation of young people, and it's hardly a surprise, we see that young people have been the hardest and the quickest hit on the labor market, starting already from a very bad place on labor markets.
Even for those who remain employed, their working hours have decreased about 23%. In regards to total working hours, the first quarter reported a 4.8% on-quarter decrease. This is equivalent to approximately 135 million full-time jobs, assuming a 48-hour working week. The second quarter is forecast to drop 10.7% compared to the fourth quarter of 2019, equivalent to 305 million full-time jobs. On a regional basis, the Americas, Europe, and Central Asia lost the most working hours. Another major hurdle this young generation is facing, on top of the general economic woes triggered by the virus, is a disruption to their education, which poses a threat to their future employment prospects. Some are coining this generation of young people the lockdown generation. The head of the International Labor Organization says significant actions need to be taken right now to try to rectify the situation, or the virus impact will last for decades. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Good morning. Some areas will see a bit of rain today. Those of us in the parts of northern regions as well as Jeju will need an umbrella until after lunch. Meanwhile, light passing showers are also in the forecast for Gyeongsang-Bukdo province from mid-afternoon into tonight. Temperatures will vary today. Seoul and Busan will have lower daytime highs compared to yesterday, but Daegu will continue to have summer-like warmth this afternoon, while Jeju will also notice big rise in temperature ratings despite the rainfall. The rest of the country will see highs similar to yesterday though. Daejeon at 24 degrees, Gyeongju topping out at 28 degrees Celsius this afternoon. After the rain lets up, we could see sunny skies return. And we'll notice the big rise in readings from tomorrow, and the warming trend continues into the weekend under mostly sunny skies. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Now, this just coming in through the wire. South Korea reported a total of 79 new coronavirus cases on Wednesday alone, adding to the continuing a second streak of large cluster of infections this week. And we'll have more on that and much more in our later newscast coming up at noon Korea time. But that does it for us at this edition of Arirang News. As always, thanks for watching.